Gunner Stockton's story begins in the quiet, rugged beauty of Tiger, Georgia, where footballs were thrown almost as often as stones skipped across the Tallulah River. Born on April 6, 2004, into a family that breathed athletics as naturally as air, his future seemed to hum faintly in the background of his childhood, like a melody waiting for someone to turn up the volume. His father, Rob, had once carved his own path in football at Georgia Southern, while his mother, Sherry, brought her competitive fire from her days on the basketball courts of Erskine College. Their home was a place where hard work wasn't preached. It was lived, demonstrated, and trusted. Even his name carried its own quiet prophecy. He was named after his great-grandfather V.D. Stockton, a World War II veteran whose nickname, Gunner, followed him from a military plane he served on. Years later, that same name would echo across stadiums filled with tens of thousands. The Stockton roots ran deep in the red Georgia soil, tangled with fierce loyalty to the Bulldogs. Gunner's grandfather, Lawrence, was the kind of fan who lived and breathed every season, as though the outcome of each game shaped the world's fate. He had rushed the field in Auburn after a massive Georgia upset, only to be sprayed by fire hoses and arrested, stories told with pride, mischief, and laughter. In 2010, after leaving Everbank Stadium following a heartbreaking overtime loss to Florida, Lawrence passed away from a sudden heart attack. The memory of that loyalty, that fire, lingered like a torch passed silently to the young boy who would one day shoulder the expectations of the same program Lawrence adored. By 6 years old, Gunner had already taken command of his youth football team. There was something about the way he gripped the ball, too big for his hands, yet already familiar, that made coaches look twice. His early training came from George Bobo, father of Georgia offensive coordinator Mike Bobo, a man whose understanding of quarterbacks was as old and tested as the game itself. Under his eye, Gunner's raw instinct began to take shape, sharpened with discipline and precision. At Rabun County High School, Gunner blossomed into a two-sport star. He had a promising talent for baseball and became a two-time All-American, but it was football that pulled at him with a gravity he couldn't resist. As a freshman, he earned the starting quarterback role, a rare accomplishment, but one that felt less like a shock and more like the natural unfolding of who he was becoming. That season, he threw for nearly 3,000 yards, connected on 34 touchdown passes, and added 17 rushing touchdowns. Local newspapers swirled his name through headlines, naming him Football Player of the Year, but even then, he carried the praise with quiet focus. The football world noticed. Invitations came, including one to the 2022 All-American Bowl. Offers rolled in from powerhouses like Alabama and Penn State. Recruiters saw in him what was becoming impossible to ignore, a rare dual-threat quarterback with intelligence, composure, and an engine built for long seasons and high stakes. As a sophomore, he elevated his craft again, throwing for 3,472 yards and 43 touchdowns while rushing for more than 1,100 yards. His reputation soared, and by the time 247 Sports ranked him the nation's top dual-threat quarterback of the class of 2022, it was only confirmation of what he was already proving on the field. Before his junior year, Gunner committed to the University of South Carolina, a decision that surprised many considering his lineage steeped in Georgia loyalty. But Gunner made choices with intention, not sentiment. During that 2020 season, he pushed Rabun County to the state's semifinals and posted staggering numbers, over 3,000 passing yards, 45 passing touchdowns, and more than 1,500 rushing yards with 26 rushing scores. He was beginning to feel like the kind of quarterback that shattered school records by accident on the way to breaking others on purpose. But when South Carolina dismissed head coach Will Muschamp and offensive coordinator Mike Bobo, the foundation of his commitment shook. What followed felt like destiny correcting itself. With family history pulling at him and opportunity calling, Gunner flipped his commitment to the University of Georgia, joining the program he had grown up revering. During his senior season, he delivered a finale worthy of the legend he was becoming. He threw for 4,134 yards, 55 touchdowns, and only one interception. He earned All-State honors for the fourth consecutive time and was crowned the Gatorade Georgia Player of the Year. By the end of his high school career, he had rewritten the stat books, 13,562 passing yards, 177 passing touchdowns, for 1,372 rushing yards, and 77 rushing touchdowns. Numbers like that didn't merely break records, they redefined them. When he arrived in Athens in early 2022, the expectations were colossal, yet Gunner handled everything with the same balance he showed as a child learning to throw spirals in his backyard. He redshirted during his first season, watching, absorbing, and studying the intricacies of the Georgia offense. Even so, he was part of the historic 2022 national championship team, experiencing the electricity of the moment from the sidelines, absorbing what winning at the highest level truly looked like. During the 2023 G-Day intra-squad game, he flashed glimpses of the quarterback he was growing into: 13 completions for 144 yards and a rushing touchdown. Competition was fierce, with Carson Beck and Brock Van Dagrif ahead of him, but Gunner didn't flinch. He waited, learned, and stayed ready. He made his collegiate debut later that season, completing passes against UT Martin, then appearing against Ball State, UAB, and ultimately Florida State in the Orange Bowl, where he threw 2 touchdowns and showcased the arm talent coaches had been whispering about behind closed doors. Entering 2024, he stood as backup to Beck. Then everything changed in the SEC championship game. Beck went down at halftime against Texas, and Gunner stepped onto the field with Georgia's title hopes on the line. He threw for 72 yards and an interception, but the Bulldogs clawed their way to a 22-19 overtime win. When the news came that Beck would miss the rest of the season, the weight of the program shifted quietly but firmly onto Gunner's shoulders. His first start came in the 2025 Sugar Bowl against Notre Dame. Under the blinding lights and the deafening pressure of college football's biggest stage, Gunner completed 234 yards and a touchdown. The team fell 23-10, but what coaches saw was promise, raw and unshaken. The 2025 season opener against Marshall marked something different, his first true victory as the starting quarterback. He threw for 190 yards and accounted for 4 touchdowns, commanding the offense with the confidence of someone finally stepping into the role he had always been meant for. In his first SEC start, he orchestrated a thrilling overtime win against number 15 Tennessee, racking up 304 passing yards, multiple touchdowns, and a rushing score. Against number 5 Ole Miss, he delivered a near-perfect performance, completing 26 of 31 passes with 4 touchdowns and adding another on the ground. Then came the showdown with number 10 Texas, where he threw for 229 yards and accounted for 5 total touchdowns, leaving no doubt that he had arrived. By then, it was clear that Gunner Stockton was no longer just the kid named after a warrior who served in the skies. He had become his own kind of fighter, a quarterback built from legacy, shaped by loss, polished by work, and destined to etch his name into Georgia football history in the only way that ever mattered to him, one hard-earned play at a time.